Today, I was going to talk about how you can build things using ChatGPT and VSCode, and really just build anything, and how maybe you might work through a thought process of doing that, and then like how perhaps us as a company, maybe somebody comes up with a good idea, maybe it comes up with ChatGPT, and then as we have spare time, we can collaborate and work on a project that is a much larger scale. And that was sort of my experience with sort of going through this process. I put together some slides, but it's probably just better to sort of show you the results of sort of what happened. But I wanted to show you the ChatGPT 3.5 versus, let's me log in here. Oh gosh, need a different browser. I signed up for ChatGPT 4, so this will go over, and it was my first time really using it, and what it does. So, okay, here we go. So this is ChatGPT 3.5, and this is what I started with. So what I did initially was ask it some ideas to build in VS Code. So I literally just asked it, some ideas of I see a typo. Unusual piece of software, product application that would want that we could build using VS Code, and it gave me some ideas. Recipe manager, budget tracker, and you can re-ask this question 100 times in different ways, and it'll give you different answers. And I did that instead of actually, and it gives you like. Then I continue to go, how would I build this? Can you help me build the recipe manager? And this is sort of gives me an idea of how to build it, what languages I would need. I need a database, how to set it up. So it gives you sort of an outline. I think ChatGPT is a very good, from my experience, was the architecture of planning a project. So I know we've discussed like naming conventions and like how do we name content types. And as I get further into talking about this, that was one of the positives I got out of this, was like ChatGPT was really good at coming up with like, here's all the content types you're going to need and the data models, and what it calls data models is each content type. And then it sort of outlined, these are the fields and these are the field types, and these are the, like whether it's a string or a drop down or a number or an F, and it planned out the whole thing. So I stopped here on this 3.5, and I decided, based off Paul's SVG demo a while back, to ask it to help me build an SVG animation generator. So I just came here and asked it to do that, and then it said certainly, and it immediately, and this is 3.5, provided me the basis of these files to get me started. And with some back and forth, and if I didn't know code, I probably would have just got stuck. But I could look at the code, it made sense of it, and I would re-ask questions where I would get stuck, or if I just didn't want to do it myself. And within an hour or so, I had an SVG Animator. So it actually was in probably 20 minutes it started to work, but I can now upload a file, an SVG file, and of course, it's not gonna do it now, right? Let's go. One that's a little less. Whoa, why isn't it working now? Works on the demo. Let's see. Okay. So I upload that SVG file, and then it renders that speed, and I can adjust the speed and reanimate it, and then generates the code. This was one way. It'll create the CSS code to apply this animation to any CSV file or SVG file, or what I was working on prior to this, which I don't think this is fully operational, this version of it, but to add some different features, is that it would generate actually the SVG file that actually has the code embedded into it. So then you could just put the SVG on any site and it would just animate. So instead of this code, it created like the SVG. I don't have that file rendered right now. But along the lines is like you could then build this SVG animation generator and expand it with all these different features. So I came back to ChatGPT, and what I did, and this is ChatGPT 4. So we have this for a month, or at least paid for it for a month for now. So what I did is I took the files that I had created and I uploaded it to ChatGPT 4, and I said, I've built this SVG animation. What could we do to expand this? And ChatGPT gave me all these different things that, oh, after reviewing your SVG animation and JavaScript files, here are some features you consider adding to it. So like over the course of time, if I kept going through this, we could build this SVG animator and an animator that had all these features, and maybe then was something that we could push out there and let people use. Of course, if you Google it, there's other SVG animators out there, so it's not like a completely unique idea or anything, but at the same time, just the thought process of how ChatGPT is helping me then build something that maybe I wouldn't have thought of or known exactly how to do otherwise. So that's what I was getting into right before this meeting, and it said, well, and then it starts writing the code, and then it even then provides me download files of the new modified files. You can send it to, we'll get into the other examples, but I kept going back and forth, and sort of where I'm at right now with this, because I didn't spend a ton of time on this. I wanted to look at some other things that ChatGPT 4 did. So I'll look at a different example here. And so I came in here and sort of asked the same thing, come up with a unique and creative web application that I can build using VSCode that I use. Can be about anything, just something useful or unique. And it came up with these 10 ideas. And so I looked at them, and I was like, oh, this travel itinerary planner sort of is a nice idea, a tool that helps users plan trips by suggesting itineraries based on interest, budget, travel dates. It could integrate with travel services for booking flights, hotels, and activities, and other collaboration things. So what I got out of that is, oh, I can maybe be like a ChatGPT and say, I'm really into snowboarding and basketball, and I like rock climbing. What would, generate me some vacation ideas and then plan my trip for me. And then I asked it, well, I like that idea, and I thought this was really good. It gave me, what I actually did, is I asked it to not only help me build the travel itinerary planner, but do it inside of DNN using 2Sexy. Because ChatGPT 4 has access to the internet, it now has access to 2Sexy's documentation. So it went and did a plan. All this, makes sense. It sort of knew that, and testing and deployment. So that's great. And then I asked it, can you help me build the models? Because that's what one of the steps it had in here was plan your application. Yeah, design the data models. So I came to that step and sort of asked ChatGPT to help me with that. And this is where I thought it did a really good job of planning. So it sort of gave me this app idea, and then it gave me sort of all the content types and then the field types and the namings of what those might be for what this application might contain. So then that inspired me to think, well, geez, I wonder if ChatGPT could read an import file of 2Sexy, an XML, and then just create the XML file for me that I could then import all those content types into Too Sexy. Well, I spent about an hour going back and forth with Too Sexy, showing it the GitHub repository of a blog app to give it an example of how an XML import file works. I uploaded the zip file actually to it because it had a hard time grabbing it from the GitHub, or so it said. Once I uploaded it to it, it reviewed it and then said, oh, yeah, I can do that. And then it gave me an example import file. Well, going back and forth over an hour or more, I never got it to work, to say the least. Got very close probably, and going back and forth, trying to figure out where was ChatGPT missing what it is in that import file that's causing it to not work. But I eventually just said, well, that probably wasn't worth my time. What was better was that initial information of what the content types were, and I could have just gone in there and probably quickly made those rather than worried about an import. But I think down the road, ChatGPT will be able to review like a good portion of like a project or whatever, and then be able to help you expand on top of it. I think Too Sexy is very new for ChatGPT. It probably hasn't had a lot of people ask questions about it. So the more we ask questions about it, the more it'll probably learn and get better. One of the things I asked it to do is help me write some of the view files. What it sort of did, I was like, oh, well, that's not exactly right, but and it's a little bit older code. And then I gave it examples of ChatGPT's new typed code, and then it sort of not quite right, but it was getting there. But at the very least, it gave me some assistance quickly to not only create this project, create it within DNN, and then, it just take time. So as the time that I had to sort of put into seeing what this process would look like, is it worth it? How hard is it? And what do you get out of it? What I think I got out of it is that there's a huge assistance that ChatGPT can give us, and not only ideas, but also just maybe ways to write code that would be more advanced, that we would maybe take us a lot longer to write. It's been a long week, so have you guys used ChatGPT that much, and how has it been useful for you? What have you? I don't know how much people have used it or not. I've used it not a ton, a little bit here and there, but I do think that the planning aspect of ChatGPT and helping with that can be very helpful. Naming conventions, starting a project. Maybe you just say, you could even use it for a project that you're working on and say, I'm building this site, and these are the 10 components that we're building. These are generally the fields that we're going to need. Can you help me outline all the things that I need for that? And what is the best naming conventions or something? And maybe it would just output that very quickly for you, so that it gets you through maybe steps that either are not that fun to do, or I don't know. I'm sort of talking out loud on ways that it can be useful.
I think this is awesome, Dustin. Like, it gets me super excited because I think, for me, it's always like the details is where I get hung up. And so it's always like, for all of you guys, like when you bring stuff to me, I can have a bunch of great ideas. Is if a story's been started or a design's been started, or, even like for coding, if people have coded things, a lot of times, like I can see, well, what if you did it this way instead? But if I had to start from scratch, it's like where I get stuck. And so I think this is just bringing the power to anybody to like have a starting place, right? Because it's pretty cool to say, yeah, I want to do a travel app, but any of us would have to spend some time to go through and say, well, what would be the form fields? What data would we need to collect to even process a request? And so what ChatGPT gave you there may not be the full amazing version of it, but it's a place to start, which expedites all of that tremendously. And then I think the way that you like then come back and ask it another question, like, can you help me come up with the data models, right? Like you can challenge ChatGPT to then give you more data. So even within the data models, you can say, well, can you give me more specific fields around travel itinerary? You know, and then it might spit even more out. Like you can basically challenge it to find the holes. So I don't think it's probably there yet to fully build an application without a human having some interface to it, but the ability to just jump ahead. And I think as an organization, we've been thinking like, what can we build internally that would be useful to the public? And so just to even have it help you generate some ideas, and you may not take the idea it gives you, but it may spur on another idea where you're like, oh yeah, that would be super helpful. And even the like SVG animation generator, I mean, how cool is that you could just kind of crank that out just using this. And so
it's not like it's complex. Like the SVG is not like complex CSS or anything. I think the cool thing about that is that somebody could just upload an SVG file, you know, tweak some settings, output the SVG file, and then that SVG file actually contains the animation settings, and wherever it's added to, it just does that automatically. But yeah, I mean, yeah, keep going. Yes, sorry.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I guess that's it. Is like, sure, there's a lot of things that aren't that difficult, but if you just make something 10% easier, well, then that's more appealing than doing it the other way, right? So I don't know. I think this was great to just kind of think and expand your brain on how you can leverage and use ChatGPT to do thinking for you, right? So you just have to know how to use the tool, and then this all of a sudden can like snowball your thought process exponentially. What would take you a week to come up with, you could have in a couple hours from a thought process perspective, like eliminate the code or anything like that. And then I think from a code perspective, if you can get a good chunk of code that then you have to just go correct a few things, that's great too. And if we can take the time to educate it on too sexy or whatnot, that also then has some advantages for us down the road in being able to work in a more efficient manner. So I think this was a great overview.
There was a RFP I was looking at this week, and one of the requests that they had, they were looking to implement an AI chatbot on their website that would go through and like search through all of their documents and resources that they have and be an engaging tool for end users to be able to find content instead of a normal or traditional search tool. So I think that's something people are starting to pick up on, and being able to, you know, point an AI tool like ChatGPT to a section of your website with all of your resources and display that information is going to be pretty powerful.
It comes with all these apps too, so, and I haven't had a chance, but like one of them's like Creative Writing Coach. I don't know what that does. But you know, they have different things now, and different apps and what they call different agents, I believe, that will go and do like work for you. So you might have a image agent, the Dolly agent that creates images or helps you, and then you have a social media one that maybe posts on social media accounts. I don't know. So sort of a difficult meeting by me, which is sort of not as outlined very well, because I get to that outline process and then I was doing too much time playing with trying to get ChatGPT to give me information to build these things. But you know, I think certain things it's good at right now, and some things it gets hung up at. But the one nice thing with ChatGPT 4 is that you can upload files to it. It can read the files. It can output files. It will return like more than one file at a time. You can so like when I asked it, it would give me 5 JSON files or give me like 2 XML files to try to import. So Anyways, that's my 3 or 4 hour, 5 hour sort of experiment with this, and what I sort of came to. But I do think that the too sexy stuff I found, just from the architecture standpoint, ChatGPT right now could be very helpful just planning a project. So, hey, we have this project and these are the things that we need. What data models might we have, and what were the fields that we might need for that? And are there any that can be shared and reused for other templates? And I don't know, if you ask those right questions, it might just have a perfect plan that then you can follow to build your project from.
Coming up with component names sounds pretty nice. I I like pushing that off onto something else, and then it's coming up with probably a little bit more cohesiveness than what that I might come up with.
Yeah, so, I don't know. I mean, I thought there was even more. It doesn't look like there's a ton, or maybe it's just made. Oh, these are made by OpenAI, so there might be third-party ones.
I just saw the mocktail thing. The other day I was like, I want, because I got a mocktail somewhere. It was really good. So then I got all interested to try to figure it out. But I'm like, well, I don't have those ingredients. So that would be fun, because it's like you tell them what ingredients you have and then say, how do I make a good drink? So, and that maybe transitions into some of Laura's ideas on holidays. We could have a holiday virtual party and then do mocktail mixologist and see which drink ends up tasting the best.
So I'll add, Dustin, to what you said, that the most important thing with all of this AI is the prompt, and just very, very minor changes in how you ask the question can significantly change the results. So, you know, your phrasing, even the order the question is asked in, can change the results, because what the AI doesn't have at this point is the human interpretation of the question, right? It's very literal in what you ask.
I was using Adobe Firefly to create some AI generated images, and I had asked it to create an image of a person writing code at their computer, and it put a person at their computer with a pencil through their hand, because it took writing very literally. And Laura suggested I rephrase that, and that fixed my problem. So that was 100% user error in my description. So yeah, very accurate.
Get you working on your clarity of thought and language.
Yeah.
Sometimes though, it's not even logical clarity.
Error. I wouldn't say a user error. I'm just thinking like one of those nuances in language where you mean something else, but like writing, you meant typing, but.
Well, and if you said it here, all of us would know exactly what you meant, but it doesn't. And you know, it's even, if you think about, if you said, write me a paragraph about marketing web services, and you could say, write me a paragraph about marketing web services in the voice of a, you know, top tier programmer or a marketing analyst or and those types of things, you know, conceivably will change the voice, which means it could be completely different.
I need to give that a shot, because the experience I've gotten from ChatGPT on like writing prompts is very, a lot of fluff and very like
that's fluffy.
Yeah, and so it's not getting into like a technical tone to it, and it's just almost like kind of what you would expect to hear in like a case study or something, and it's probably not super relevant then at that point. So
I mean, if you're writing a case study and it's giving you what you expect to hear in a case study, then, you know.
Well, I don't want a stereotypical case study, but I do want kind of the foundational elements of a case study.
I understood what you're trying to say there, Chris, but it did sound funny.
I just see, because I haven't used this, I gave it this image. I don't know if it's really reading it, because I mean, in DALL-E, it should be able to read it, right? And then I asked it to code what it saw in that image. And then it gave me a basic hero section. I mean, really basic. So I don't know if it's very good at that, but
Well, yeah, I think this is a good thought process. I could encourage everybody to get in there and play with it in different ways, because I think we're probably going to figure out, to Mark's point, like when I prompted this way or when I followed this process, I got much better results than when I did it this way. And I think we could all kind of then powwow and learn from that too.
Yeah, and I think the prompts will increase the speed at which you get the results. So like as we get better at prompting or understanding what, like if ChatGPT is really good at, like when you ask it this question for too sexy, that we know it, we're going to get the best results back, that we start to learn those things. Because I definitely feel like a lot of time was spent learning how to either ask the right question or tell it what I really needed, or it would only give me partial part of what I needed, and then I'd have to re-ask it to redo it or give me the full thing. So
just briefly mentioning on like the accuracy of the response from ChatGPT versus doing like a Google search for a question that you have. One thing that I do really like is that you can give it an example of what you're looking for, and it's going to output something very similar to that. So like 2 examples I have is if you have a JSON object that you need to extract some data from, you can paste in that block of code, right? And then it will create your mappings to do a filter or to exclude different data or merge data into processes. It's going to use that same naming format that JavaScript object has. So it's going to give you code that should work or is pretty easy to get to work. Where if you're doing like a Google search for something, you're going to find, okay, here's how you implement a filter. Then you need to go and take it and apply it to your code based on the use case that you have. So I think in that case, it usually adds more work that you have to do. And then another example is like if you needed to create like a regular expression, right? You can give it these different examples of what you're trying to do and then let it generate that for you instead of you going to a tool and trying to figure out what's the different format that you need to output and to get that to work. So I've had pretty good luck with that so far. And I try to use ChatGPT instead of going to Google when I'm trying to figure out a coding related problem I have.
And one thing I do sometimes when I have jQuery and I don't want to use it anymore is just have it convert it real quick to JavaScript. I mean, refactoring code is very good.
Yeah.
Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our Gorilla Learning Lab. We have a lot more banana tidbits for you to get ape over. Check out our other videos or visit our website at www.10poundgorilla.com. I'm swinging on out of here.
Ooh, ooh, ah, ah. Ooh, ooh, ooh. You're not subscribed? That's bananas!